Hello, everybody, and welcome to AI People. Today, we're talking to Jiquan Ngiam, who is CEO at Lutra AI, which is an agent platform to automate business processes. Greetings, Jiquan.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
So we always kick things off by asking our guests to make some predictions about the AI industry, which I know people love making predictions about AI, but it's interesting to get these kind of views of leaders in the industry. So the first question is, how do you see humans and AI collaborating when it comes to work in 5 years' time and then in 15 years' time?
Oh boy, those are two very different horizons there. I think we often say we tend to underestimate the future and overestimate the near term. So I would say that I kind of take the analogy to how self-driving cars go. And the interesting thing here is that you take 15 years ago, self-driving cars just started back then, like kind of when you're timing that. And today you see Waymo's running completely autonomously in San Francisco. And it's incredible. I've been in them and the years goes. And then 10 years ago, relative to your timeframes again, they were barely working. You had to have the safety driver in there all the time, working with the car, the user, where they're going. And it was kind of like, a bit iffy, something does the right thing, the wrong thing, doesn't cut off the right people right, but they get stuck. And I think that's where we are with AI, which is today, technology is very new. It shows a ton of promise, but when you hit the road using it, you run into all those, edge issues and like, man, the user take over. And so in the 5-year time horizon, I actually think we're still going to be very much kind of in a mode where we are looking at how humans and AI work together, where humans are driving the AI, right? We are guiding them, really having them on a leash so that they do the work correctly and accurately. And that's kind of where I think where we are going to be, like maybe 2 to 5 year horizon. The next 5 years will be like this. And we're seeing this first happen in engineering, and then after that, lots of other fields. I want to see this happen too. The 15-year horizon is going to be an interesting one where I think we tend to underestimate it. And this is where I think at that point of time, we can expect a huge amount of differences in quality of the model, cost of the model, and speed of the model, just like how we've seen this happen for hardware, storage, mobile devices. And if you think of that converging, what I think you will see is really more independent, autonomous, computers, like Waymo that you go in and you hit the address, brings you there, you come out, this is great. And I think you start to see more of that more of that style of experiences happening. Or you need to get 100 leads for your business, type in what you want, hit go, and then it finds the right people for you. And critically, it's not spamming 100,000 people, like kind of like what some of the AIs today do. They're throwing a box of AI stuff and seeing what hits. But it's going to like do a lot of deep work to these are the 100 people that really need what you have. I'll find them and bring them to you, right? And then it finds 100 people, and those 100 people respond really well because they're not getting hit by, again, 100,000 things. They're being hit by, hey, these are the things that can really serve you, right? And so I think there's this world where the technology gets to a point where it's more autonomous, does things accurately, and we trust it more, right? And today, there's limited trust, and I think the trust will only increase, as the technology improves.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And in terms of the kind of AGI question, where do you think we are? Is it something that we're getting close to, or are we still 20, 30 years away, kind of forever?
Well, I don't. So it's interesting. I don't think it's going to be forever. So I definitely think it's going to be probably in my mind, the 5 to 15 year horizon there. But it's a bit hard to put a finger on what does AGI really mean.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be one of the flip things like, oh, tomorrow wake up, AGI is here. It's going to be one of these slow rollout things. And maybe self-driving car analogy again. We see this happening in pockets right now in San Francisco and Phoenix and all. It's not in the world yet. Not everywhere self-driving cars. I have a daughter. She's going to grow up, and in 15 years when she starts to learn how to drive, I'm anticipating she doesn't need to learn how to drive. She's going to hit in where she wants to go and she goes. And that'll be true for anywhere she wants to go, right? Not just the city. So I think for AGI, we're going to see that same thing where we'll see pockets of what I call AGI looking behavior in some industries. I think the closest one again is engineering, where code sometimes when you use it feels like AGI. It's like it's just going off and doing stuff, and it's like this is right. But then 5% of the time it did something it didn't do, and you go like that was terrible. So it's kind of not there yet. But I imagine this will start happening in certain sectors, cities like engineering, then that's spread into different sectors, and eventually you start to see technology more pervasive all around us. And by the time it happens, we don't even realize it's there because we just got normalized to what this technology, looks like now.
Yeah, it stops being magic anymore and just
Not
becomes
mentioning
part of normal life.
exactly.
And
So yeah.
how do you see AI kind of affecting the global economy? Do you think this is going to make kind of wealth inequality worse, or do you think it's going to narrow the gaps in opportunity and allow everybody to kind of rise up?
Oh boy, that's a hard one. I think again it's a multi-horizon question there. So it turns out I think for the short term it's going to be really I think it's gonna be rough, right? We've seen this already in fields like media production, graphic design, like that has completely changed, and some people's jobs just were wiped out in the span of 1-2 years, right? Writing, engineering jobs have kind of gone down in the US too. In the short term, I think there's going to be a lot of shifts like this where some jobs that used to be needed a very big human component can now be smaller because the machine takes on a lot more. And I think industries and businesses are still digesting and reacting to that, and that digestion is going to be a bit hard. It's like eating a big meal very quickly. Um, so there's high disruptions. But then I think as a society, what I kind of think is that people evolve very well to adapt to circumstances. When
Hmm.
our society went from an agriculture heavy society to a more industrial knowledge heavy society, it was very rough for lots of people. But and that result end of it emerged okay. We have now people now when we go and do our office work and stuff. Someone who's a farmer 50 years ago looks at this and go like, oh, what are those guys doing? Who knows? They're not working. Today, from us today and 50 years from now, I think the type of jobs are going to be very different. How we do our jobs will be incredibly different. Extremely hard to predict what I think those will look like. I think there'll be more, in some sense, there'll be more equality too, because say access to education. It used to be that you need to go to the very best universities to get access to the top education.
Hmm.
Today, if you're motivated enough, you can just talk to any one of the frontier models and learn anything you want.
Yeah.
That's equality. But then because equality is higher, what does that mean? It means that competition is higher. Everyone can
Yes.
do that now. So how do you stand out? So the bar just keeps going up and up and up for all of us, and that's going to be tough, right? So simultaneously more equality, simultaneously more the rising tide is coming, but all boats are up. So it's hard
Yeah.
to become the fastest boat in the water now, right? So we're going to have that of a challenge in there. But what I think we will have is more abundance, more prosperity. I hope. Just like today, we don't have to worry about food. We can Uber, DoorDash, whatnot. Food arrives. I think was a similar world in which we have abundance of knowledge, abundance of things that we could create and do, right? And I think that will be a different society. I'm optimistic it'll be a one that our kids will grow up with a lot more in their lives. The quality of lives will be higher, but honestly, hard to predict how that will pan
Yeah, it's tough to know. I feel like everybody's in that kind of similar situation right now. So
Yeah.
before we jump into to Lutra, do you just want to give us an intro to yourself, like your background, interested in your journey, kind of studying AI at Stanford and working with Andrew Ng, and then obviously Coursera and Google. It's quite a journey you've had to get to building a startup.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, man. Yeah, so my journey and maybe all of this really started in what 2009 in grad school when I started doing machine learning research, and it was kind of fun back then because in 2009 when you work on neural networks or deep learning, people in the machine learning field were a bit skeptical, like all of us were. Has been that way for a while, and then but what really took off was that the fact that throwing more compute data and scale at it just made it better. So Andrew is my advisor in Stanford. We then kind of realized that the more that people understood the technology, the more people we had playing with it, the faster it would develop. And so that led us to actually started creating online courses, machine learning class at Stanford in 2011, 2012. And that evolved into Coursera, where I was at for 7-8 years, helping to build the company from the ground up there. Subsequently, I did education and lots of things in there and very meaningful work. And I think the common thread here is like giving people new superpowers to do new things. Now, I then went on to Google Brain to do research again, and now coming back to Startup Land, where at Lutra, the common thread here is how can we help people get new superpowers with AI? Right. So AI, it's pretty cool. ChatGPT, Claude, you can type to it, it gives you responses. It can be a nice thought companion and help you write better. I think the real power of AI would come when you can tell it to do things that you are working on. You can interact with the ecosystem of applications you work with and be able to get things done for you. And so what we've been looking at really is how can the platform AI be connected to applications, data you care about, and not just chat with you, but also help you get things done. Like Lutra in the morning can say, hey, go through my emails, figure out what's most important, let me know. Or Lutra, can you look at this data from our sales last month, analyze it, piece it out. Okay, now make a dashboard of this, like like a BI tool would, and keep it updated so that I know what's going on in my business, right? Stuff like this. And so start thinking about how AI can do those tasks, and that's what we're building at Lutra.
And what do you see as being like the core problem that you're solving with Lutra? Because obviously there's lots of kind of agent automation platforms out there, but you take quite a different approach with Lutra. And do you want to explain what that is?
No, happy to. So I think there are two aspects of Lutra that are pretty different. I think one of them is there's a very open design space of how I think AI should interact with applications. It's a very new technology, and the interfaces between how AI, humans, and AI and systems work. This is something that we've been doing a lot of research and development on. And maybe to pick a way to think about that is traditionally a lot of automation tools have been designed for the end user to work with. And what that means is that it's designed for someone to click and drag, make boxes, and then have a system run those automations. So the user is programming, but pseudo programming through those interfaces. I think what Lutra we are thinking about is if the AI is smart enough to operate with a computer system, is able to program and code, why not have the human manage the AI and the AI take on the role of working on the computer, engineering, coding, debugging, testing things, and then delivering the result back to the user, and the user is just giving feedback on that was right, that was not right, change it up this way. And the AI takes on more of the role of the operator of the computer, right? And for us, the thing that we're doing very differently here is redesigning those operator interfaces, be it from one that's very code generation heavy to one that's very much configuration heavy, and seeing how that works. So that's from the how we mentally think about Lutra. Now, in terms of your questions on what problems Lutra solves for people, the critical problem here, I think, is that it's that we have number one, way too many SaaS applications we use. The number of software we buy just goes up every year for every company, and that results in the data being in silos in all these applications. And for a daily person doing work, they are kind of switching between things all the time, right? And it's very hard to get the right context to make a decision. And sometimes these applications, as they develop and mature, they kind of grow a bit hairy, right? So for example, in this meeting application we're in right now, there's tons of buttons in here that I don't use at all.
Yes,
But every button, a ton of them, but every button was added because some user, some important customer of theirs wanted that button, right? So you think about that and you go like, man, hey, I'm a salesperson. And you wake up in the morning and go like, I need to know the top 5 deals to work on today because I have some churn coming up. Which ones do I work on? What you do is that you pull up your CRM, maybe HubSpot or Salesforce, you look through it one by one, and go like, okay, that one, and it takes like an hour to just orient yourself before you start running off and doing what you need to do, right? So what we have seen some users use Lutra for is like use case like this where you ask the system, say, go pull up all the the deals in my CRM system that have a churn risk. Use AI to evaluate the churn risk. Create a dashboard for me to look at that prioritizes these things with timelines on communication. And the AI can reach into the systems, pull out the data it needs from multiple systems, and then show it to you in a way that has only the buttons you care about, which is filter by, which like some categories, sort by this, whatnot, and you go, okay, this is what I want to work with today, right? So can AI take on the role of making all this data that we have accumulated or are accumulating over the years so much more useful for us, interpreting it, helping us present it in the right way so that we can use it, right? And so that's kind of like how I think about Lutra, like really getting into the data that's such as what you're working with, APIs helps you to do, and making that usable. for your day-to-day work and analysis and all.
And you take a code first approach, is that right? So making kind of much more robust kind of automations than, like your typical chatbot or something like that.
Yes, and I think one of the things that we notice is maybe many of us might have heard of the term MCPs, or model context protocols. One of the cutting edge things in the AI ecosystem today. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how Lutra's approach is slightly different, but we're all converging in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So in MCPs and model context protocols is this new methodology where people are saying, we need to get apps to work with AI. This is the interface we will do it in, coming up with that. And everyone's designing now their interface layer for their applications to connect into AI. And in there, what we normally see is that, think about a tool like, maybe going back to the CRM use case again, get me all my contacts and their properties in my HubSpot. What these services do, tools usually do, is to get you all the data, put it into this big text block, like normally it's JSON, it's like the structured format, but they give it text and then give it all to the AI to say, here's what came out of it, as a message, so to speak, like a chat message with all the data. Say, do this next. And so what happens is that when we approach a lot of the approach when we connect apps to AI in a way that is very raw, like this, we're sending it basically the text outputs, the structured data as text to the models. A lot of things go over. Your IDs go over, which are these crazy strings that no one understands. All the data goes into the conversation history, and the model is limited by how many tokens it can take, how big the chat messages can be. And it starts to get confused, right, very quickly. And it starts to have difficulties reproducing the data you want it to do. So that's kind of the canonical way people do things today to get AI to work with apps. And it works well for small amounts of data, very tiny ones, but quickly starts to break when you get into real world situations. So at Lutra, we say, hey, that's the problem here, is that we are commingling and mixing the data and the logic, because we want the model and the AI to logically do things, like operate like a chef, like the cooking stuff. But it was asking the chef to consume all the food as he's eating, like doing it. It's kind of weird, And so what we want instead is to have the model and AI say, can you instead focus just on the logic, on how data should be operated on and transformed? Write some software code to do those operations, and then be able to operate on the data like at a distance. Like okay, now take this data, sort it by this column, print out the first row, do a summation here, give me the number. So when the model is operating at a higher level of operations, it doesn't need to know the data. Right? It can peek in and say, oh, the data looks like this, that's what I should do. But it doesn't need to have all the data in its chat history, so to speak. And instead, what it could do is just specify the operations it's working on. And when you take that kind of approach, you start to get a good number of benefits. Right? The first benefit being that you can now operate on a large scale of data. Because if you have a huge table that's gigabytes of data inside a data warehouse, you can say, hey, model, go and query the table using this query, sort it on this column, and group by this other few columns, and then filter it out and give me the result. That operations can be specified at a higher level of abstraction. So that's kind of how we think about it. And then the second one, I think, is because the data and logic are separated, you also get a bit less of the problems of prompt injections, where if someone in their data, imagine someone in the CRM typed in, do this other instruction instead, we can't be sure if the model is following it, if the instruction is very long and it's like the messages, it sees it. But then if you separate out the data and logic, then the model never actually sees all that data, and it's able to be a bit more isolated from any bad data that might be in the system. So there's a few things in there that we do. Yeah.
It feels like a nice kind of halfway house, if you like, between the kind of vibe coding, where people like talking to the models in like natural language, but then, getting the models to work in a much more kind of accurate code-based way that they're kind of used to working in, if that makes sense. So you get the kind of accurate, robust results, but then we still get to talk in natural language, which I think people kind of expect to kind of work in that way moving forward.
Exactly. Like you can imagine like you're talking to a junior engineer and they're just writing lots of software extremely quickly to get your things done, right? So it sounds like how I think about it. And because you're talking to an engineer, they can get a lot more done and be very confident in how they're scaling up what they're doing because they are engineering the processes. Yeah.
So when you're kind of thinking about these processes, like when do you choose to use like the LLM and when do you choose to use that kind of deterministic sort of script in the pipeline?
That's a great quick question in there. So I think it's in general, I think our design principle has thus far been if something can be done deterministically, do it deterministically. Like use the LLM only when it's needed
Hmm.
and have it only, like it's going to make mistakes, right? So you reduce the mistake rate of it. So what we do is this two-phase thing where um, the the Lutra system takes the user's instructions, figures out what they want to do with it. If it needs to write software code to do stuff, it writes some software code to do it. Now, the interesting thing is that you start to wonder like, can Lutra like read all my emails and maybe extract out important information? Maybe I get lots of payments from emails, or people are signing up and giving me feedback in my email inbox. I like to process it, right? And so what's interesting about Lutra is that it does this kind of like a inception thing, I'll say, which is it writes a little bit of software that says, hey, go read all the emails, pull every email, and then use another AI function to parse the emails and parse them out in this particular format, and then put that into a spreadsheet, right? And so when it's almost like AI writing software that in which that software calls more AI to then do more things, right? But then what's interesting about this is that the embedded AI, the AI that's far down the stream on this, that's doing just the small little step of extracting data from an email, doesn't have to worry about anything except extracting data from the email, right? So you get this nice composability aspect of it where um, some of the AI functions are very, very specialized in what they do, but they are generated on the fly by this parent AI that's writing the software.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how we think about that. Mhm.
Yeah, it's definitely, it sort of blows your mind when you start thinking about these things. And how do you see like the kind of agent process automation market evolving? Like obviously there are more and more apps kind of coming into the market. Like what do you see as being the ones that's going to separate those who kind of fade away and those who go on to be, widely adopted and in kind of business?
I think the hard ones are I think for number one, reliability is the hardest. So if you tried a lot of the agentic automation things out there, try this, which is run it once, wait 5 minutes, run it again, run it again, and see how much variation do you get in the outputs. You know, and what you will find is that a lot of them you get a ton of variation. It's like almost you run it like at completely different inputs outputs on there. One second. Sorry about that. Something was in my
Yeah,
brain.
no worries. Don't worry.
Okay. Again. So so I think reliability. So going back again. So yes, if you run it many times, and what you notice is that sometimes you get the same outputs, different outputs, and it's surprising, right? And you cannot rely on that in any kind of business operating setting because you can't predict what you give your customer or your internal metrics or your internal stuff. And so reliability, I think, is at the crux of it. And so when we think about a code-based generation approach, do it
Jiquan?
once.
Oh, sorry. I just
Oh,
lost you
something
for kind of
happened.
10 seconds
I'm
or so.
hearing.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry,
I
one
can hear you
second.
again now. Yeah.
Oh, that was really strange. Sorry, give me a second.
It just dipped out, but we're good again now.
Yep.
Oh no. Uh,
Good again. Okay.
yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I think someone in my iPods dropped off there. I was going to say, so reliability. Yes. So, the difference in the code generation based approaches, are that once the AI figures out how to do a task once in code, when you say do it again, it can just run the same code again. And so you get this deterministic quality to it where you get the sense of reliability. Every time you run it, these steps will be taken. The math, if it does math in the background, the math will not change. So
Yeah.
imagine if an AI say compute my active user metric, and then every day it decides on a different way to decide what active users is, and you can't really predict. That'd be terrible, right? So we need some ways to balance the creativity of the AI and the determinism. So number one, reliability. Number two, I think, is verifiability. So great, it's writing reliably now, but how do I verify that it's actually doing the right thing? How do I know?
Mhm.
Sometimes AI appears like a black box. You run it, something happens, you go like, that was good, but what did it do? Can you peek inside behind the scenes and say, okay, what is it doing? How is it doing it? What does that look like? And I think that's very important for agentic systems to work. So the more you're unable to peek behind the process, the harder is it to verify. So that's number two, I think. So reliability, verifiability, and then I think number three, I think, of obviously of all that is usability. There's a lot of tools out there that I still think are following the drag and drop thing, which is not that easy to use.
The kind of low
The
code. Yeah.
low code, no code solution. So if you are like building yet another low code, no code solution, you are building yet another low code, no code solution. It's not really an AI solution, right? And so your market isn't expanding. You're not really serving the broader audience that you can serve, right? So I think those three things are things in my mind right now: reliability, verifiability, and hey, is this usable? Like, does this make it actually easier for people to get the things done?
And there's kind of two kind of distinct arms, if you like, to kind of agent process automation. So there's like the general purpose assistants, which are kind of a single platform you can use in lots of different parts of your business. Or there are other companies building like very, very specific kind of domain tuned agents to work in, a particular process in healthcare, or like something very specific. Like, do you think will just be different use cases which will suit kind of different type of solutions, or do you think one of those approaches is going to end up winning out?
Um, Might be a time horizon question again. I think
Yes, yeah.
there. So I think so. The problem today is that the technology is not perfect yet, right? Especially if you ask it's hard to predict sometimes. Will it do my legal task well, my accounting task well, or my design creative analysis task well, stuff like that. And it's going to do better in some domains and worse in some domains. And because of that, I think in the short term, what we'll see is actually vertical oriented solutions do better. And just by the nature of being able to more precisely guardrail the model, more precisely tell it what it can do well, what it cannot do well, convey to the user those qualities. Um, but as the capabilities of these systems improve, as we had this thought about AGI, so to speak, then the more general things start to work well for everyone, right? And so that will catch up over time, I think. And we'll see general agents start to be able to do more and more. But until then, I think in the short, probably 5-10 year, 5 year horizon, verticalization is probably a good thing to do for most startups in there, where they're really thinking about how specific verticals can get to the accuracy numbers they need to deploy the software.
Okay. So if we just think about your experience of kind of company building and that whole kind of startup process, like what have you learned about selling AI tools into kind of operations and go-to-market teams who are kind of very untechnical?
It's interesting. I think the most important thing in AI tools right now is that it's this very interesting technology that is simultaneously so easy to use. Type whatever you want. Just if you can tell someone what you want to be done, AI can do it. But simultaneously very hard to use because you do not know what to type into that box, right? So I think Bryce being very cognizant about the technology having this like dual nature of um, seemingly easy, but also very hard. It's kind of like the kind of thing we would keep in mind in there, where people are just not yet familiar or grounded yet on how to think about this technology, right? And so sometimes people get almost shocked that something's working, and then after that they need to know the boundaries of where it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
And so I think really understanding that part of it is the crucial piece of the puzzle, because then when you have that and when they understand it, then they can start mapping to use cases, right? Like, this is how I can use it. This is what value I can get from it. This is where I shouldn't be looking for value. This is where I should be looking for value. And that line is just, I think, really hard to draw for most people with AI technology. And I think it's something that we all grapple with and trying to sell this to customers. I think there are many ways to communicate that line for people. You can, as simple as the AI works with these different applications from an integration perspective, all the way down to like, here are 10 examples of what people have precisely done. You can take it and remix it to do what you want. And so figuring out the right communication to them on that is really important. So for us, for example, where we have this whole library of playbooks that are examples of real tasks that people have done on Lutra, and people go through that library and find examples there and like, I see these things, I can see how I can use it. They're able with the AI to use it. Then the other thing that's also interesting about that is we are also like evolving this, which is chat is a very interesting interface where it's an interface where what we expect people to do as a AI developer isn't always what people will do. And so here's an interesting one, which is I get support tickets all the time on like, hey, your AI did this, it didn't do it right, or hey, AI did this, can it actually do X, can it do Y? How should I use it with Z instead? And then my answer to them has been, well, I give the answers, but I also often ask them, hey, have you tried asking Lutra that same question you just asked me?
To see if it can
like,
solve that.
They were like, oh no, I didn't think about asking the AI the thing I just asked you. And I was like, oh, let's go back and try it. And often the case is that the AI reads their question that they just sent to me, understands it, and then does it, right? And so even though your AI system is really powerful, users of our platforms have very ingrained instinctive behaviors. And I think this comes from understanding like how they currently work with computers. So today in this, meeting software that we are recording this podcast, there are all these buttons. If I click a button and the button doesn't respond, I'm like, it's broken. Software is very broken, can't do anything about this, does that, right? So we are used to software working deterministically where you type something, doesn't work, it doesn't work. You're done, right? You can hit the machine a bit, but it doesn't do anything, right? But the funny thing about AI is that it does something wrong, you go like, oh, the instinct for most users are, oh, it's broken, can't do it. But the funny thing is that you can give it feedback and now it works. So it's almost like you can hit the AI a few times and then start to do things correctly now, And so this is the interesting thing where I think users are not comfortable or familiar with that kind of experience yet. And so helping them understand a bit of the expectation of how to work with the this kind of software will help. And I think being at the forefront, cutting edge of it, we are so comfortable with this, especially because we use AI in and out of our coding experiences day to day. Most of our users do not, right? And I just having them connect the dots, I think is pretty important. Again, I think time horizons. I think in 5 years' time, I think all of this will become obvious because we'll all be using all kinds of interesting chat AI software, and everyone will be like, yeah, that's obviously the thing you should do. You should tell the AI to fix it, But to 5 years from now, that this is where the transition is happening, and so people don't get it yet.
The AI's coming for support tickets as well as everything else. So,
yeah.
And as you kind of think about growing the company, are you kind of taking more of the kind of PLG kind of developer community building approach, or are you thinking more of a kind of a sales-led approach, or mixture of both?
I think to be frank, we're experimenting, I think, on both of that. So I think we're definitely more product led in general, and then we are looking into adding more sales assisted component to the process too. That's how I think about it, like product led sales in some ways. And the way we think about it is that the market's noisy now. There's so many options out there.
Yeah.
People are trying to email you like, I kind of archive lots of emails I get from SDRs now, and it's just too noisy, right? There's too much to respond to. So if you're running a process in which you got to take a sales call, talk through things, sell it, it's going to be tough, right? Because there's so many people, and how many calls can they buy or take before they decide on something? Versus, I think if you said, okay, here's the software, go try it out. More people in the team can experiment, they surface it, they bubble it up, and sometimes the path to adoption that we have seen is, one or two people who are more forward thinking in their organization about AI. They're out there experimenting, they're out there playing with tools, or maybe they have been tasked to do that. and then they try things out, right? And say like, this works, that didn't work, I really like this. And then they bring it to their companies and say like, hey, this is the one we should really consider. Right. So they're already out there trying it. And if for them to try it, you need a conversation and a sales call. That's one barrier that I don't think is great in this time and day of how AI software is being sold. So we are very much in that mind of like, get people into the software, get all their feedback as quickly as possible, improve the software as fast as we can, and get them to succeed, right, as quickly as possible. If you should, if the promise of AI powered software lives up to the dream, you should be able to get some degree of value in less than a few minutes, 2-3 minutes. The system should be gaining tremendous value. And if that's true, I think that makes it easier for you to convince the buyer that this is valuable to them.
Yeah, sure.
That's how
So
we think
people
about
can
it in
kind of
general.
engage with it and quickly get that moment of, oh, wow, this is really doing what I want it to. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. I think the hard part here is actually getting building in distribution mechanisms to get viral growth, right? Which is, say one user adopts it, how do they bring in more internal or external users into their platform? And I think that part is going to be interesting because especially for the automation type folks, because if someone automates a task in their company, they're not going to share that automation with the world. It's like, it's my company's private processes, right?
Yeah.
But they might share it internally, right? So we have been thinking of ways that what do people want to share and put out there that will bring in others, right? That those are the connections that we have also been working on.
And when you kind of started building Lutra and you obviously came up with the idea, was there like an assumption that you had going into building the business that turned out to be wildly wrong? Or is there anything that kind of massively surprised you when you started the business?
Oh boy, I would say not wildly wrong, but I think when we started the business, we were very early, like in the technology, the cost of the models was still very high. The context, if people recall this, when ChatGPT-4 GPT-4 first came out, the context window was 8,000 input tokens. And if you paid, I don't know what, 3x the cost, you got 32,000 input tokens, and the output tokens was like 2,000 or 4,000 or something like this, small, tiny numbers, right? And today we're talking about millions, so
yeah,
the order of increase. And so what was really hard, I think, in the early adoption of technology phase for many companies started that around the time we started was the immaturity of the technology meant that for us to bring something that was usable to users needed a lot of hacks. We can't just take an entire document and stuff it into the context and say, go at it. Too expensive, too slow, not feasible. This runs out of tokens. So we had to do a lot of work to work around all those limitations. And then in a year's time, we'll do a lot of work to rip out all the created to get rid of the limitations because of that. So I think one thing that maybe was like not a thing that went wildly wrong was like we knew this was changing. It was very hard to predict how fast it would change, how quickly it would get better. And so I think we were all a little surprised at how fast the technology is developing, I think. And I think maybe we have grown to be a bit more thoughtful about, hey, where is it that the technology is going to improve? How do you figure out what you can work with today and not spend too much time on band-aids that you have to rip out later because it's actually it won't be needed. And that's the really hard part to always be thinking about. When the technology is mature, I think all that goes away because now it's like, today we're in a zone where speed, cost, and context window sizes are really, really good now. Right, so a lot of band-aids are out now. But in the past, we also had to do band-aids around the models were not multimodal. So when we had multimodal input from a user, we got to switch over to a vision model, get the data out, bring it back to the text model, and keep going. Today, it's like stuff the image into the same context sequence as the text data, and you're fine. So again, all these are like little band-aids here and there. That's a ton of them that we over time had to figure out. And maybe the takeaway here for me was, I think we need to, there's this interesting advice, which is develop for where the technology will be. And then for me, the surprising thing is actually, no, you should develop for where the technology is and plan for where it would be.
Okay.
Because
if you so plan for the changes that you can make in the future.
Correct. Yeah. But don't develop for the future because that means is that you got to add all the band-aids now, because you're expecting that technology to work, and you cannot deliver a solution to your customers today without the band-aids. Right.
Yeah.
So don't develop saying, oh, when the next model iteration arrives, it will be great. That's actually not a great path to take, because you can't ship something today.
Yeah.
So those are all plans. Those are all just plans, right? So I think there's some advice that I think we saw around fooling around saying that everyone should work on the cutting edge. That next model will make your stuff work, and now it doesn't work. It's okay. I'm like, I don't think that really works, because you either be in bandit hell, and you're shipping stuff with bandit hell, or you're actually going to be in, you're just going to be waiting for something to arrive, and your customers are going to be waiting too, right? So not great.
And if it never does arrive, it kind of totally ruins your business plan, I guess. So.
Exactly. And then when it arrives, everyone will be building on that without the band-aids, so they don't have the legacy problems that you have.
Yeah.
So it's like this situation where you got to just be very thoughtful about where things are today and building for where things are.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been great having you on today, Jiquan. If people want to get in touch, what's the best way to reach you? Are you LinkedIn, Twitter? Where do you spend most of your time?
LinkedIn a bit more than Twitter. I'm trying to be more active on Twitter too. So both LinkedIn and Twitter are great. Find my name, Ngiam, on there. It's pretty unique. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. And then if you are interested to try out Lutra, go to Lutra, lutra.ai.
And there's like a freemium, so people can get up and running, is there?
That's right. That's a free tier there. Go in there, sign up, play, but let us know how it goes. Give us all the feedback, and we want to make this work for you.
Great stuff. Well, thanks for your time, and thanks to everybody watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of AI People coming soon.